Hello, Rob here, and welcome to RandB Reviews, the Q&A video. For those of you that are just tuning in, I ended up getting away from my channel for a few months because I had a lot going on in my personal life. The last time I had done a movie review was actually July when I reviewed the biopic Elvis with Austin Butler. I decided the best way to get back into the channel was to offer my viewers and subscribers a chance for them to ask me questions. So today I'm going to be doing the Q&A video. Hopefully I answer the questions the way you want, and hopefully you like the answers that I give. So I'm going to go ahead and answer them in the order that I received them, so let's go ahead and begin. The first question is from Tevya Smolka. Tevya asks, I'm just wondering, what's your favorite movie, game, comic you've seen and played this year? Okay, well Tevya, when it comes to comics, unfortunately I hate to disappoint you, but I don't really read comic books, so I can't really answer that question. But and as for a game, this may not be I don't know if this is what you're looking for, but my friend Justin, who has guest starred on the video a few times, actually got a NES system, an original Nintendo system that he found, and he bought a few games like Tetris and Dr. Mario, Super Mario Bros. 3. So whenever I've been going over there and visiting him, we played that, and I got reacquainted with those games. I would probably say of those games that I played, I would say Dr. Mario. I'm still, getting reacquainted with Tetris and Super Mario Bros. 3. It's been about 20 years since I played those games. So right now, I would probably say Dr. Mario. And as for favorite movie, this year, I'm going to do two categories. I'm going to do stuff that I saw in the theater this year, which I'll be honest has been kind of limited because of my time, but also movies that I rented from the library as well as streaming. So for the movies that I saw like in the comforts of my own home, there's a movie that I had heard about that I finally got to see called The Roaring Twenties. It's from 1939. It stars James Cagney and Humphrey Bogart. It's advertised as a gangster movie, but I think it's a little bit more deeper than that. Basically, Cagney plays somebody that fought during World War I. He comes back after the war's over, and unfortunately, the job that he worked at before he left doesn't have a position for him anymore, and he's having a hard time finding a job, just like I guess other soldiers did at the time. So he ends up discovering the bootlegging business. So he runs a bootlegging thing, and something I liked about the movie was the backstory of Cagney. I mean, I haven't done a movie review for it yet, maybe I should, but basically most gangster movies like Little Caesar with Edward G. Robinson shows that he's already established as like a bad guy, and there's other gangster movies that came on later in the decade where they just are evil, but you don't know why they are, how they are. And this movie shows, he's not exactly an evil person either, but it's like you understand how he became how he was, and I feel like it was much richer, and I really like that. Another movie that I saw that I actually reviewed on the channel, the first movie review I did for this year was Orphans of the Storm, which was the silent movie with Lily and Dorothy Gish. It was a melodrama about two sisters at the dawn of the French Revolution. They're gonna go to the city so that Dorothy Gish gets her vision back and they get separated, and I thought that was a very good suspenseful melodrama. And then another movie that I saw on Netflix was Rush, starring Chris Hemsworth. It was from 2013, where he plays race car driver James Hunt. Now, as for movies I saw in the theater, there's two that really stuck out to me. One of them, of course, was Elvis, which was the biopic from director Baz Luhrmann, as well as it stars Austin Butler. I thought it was a very well done biopic. I mean, the beginning it did kind of move a bit fast, but I think once it slowed down and you learned about, how his manager treated him, as well as the theme about getting taken advantage of in the business, I thought that it was very good. And the Batman, even though there were some derivative moments, I liked how refreshing it was, because if you look at all the Batman movies, like early on they were like superhero comic book action movies, and then slowly over time, especially with The Dark Knight, they become a little bit more realistic and less comic book-ish. Some people thought the movie was too long. I thought it was just right, but I thought it was refreshing, and I thought it was very enjoyable. Jared Griffith asks, I have a question. What do you think of the idea of new actors playing previous Doctors on Doctor Who? Like when Richard Hurndall played William Hartnell's Doctor in The Five Doctors, and when David Bradley played William Hartnell's Doctor in the special Twice Upon a Time. Personally, I didn't have a problem with Richard Hurndall in The Five Doctors. I mean, I found out that him and Hartnell had similar upbringings and background, and of course Hartnell's family approved of it. And so I thought he did a pretty good job. And David Bradley, and I think because he did that biopic, Adventures in Time and Space, were about the beginning of Doctor Who, I thought because we saw him play Hartnell as well as the first Doctor, I thought when he played the first Doctor in Twice Upon a Time, I thought it was a good transition. I thought both actors did a good job at being faithful to Hartnell's portrayal while making it their own. However, I'm not really sure if I would want to see like a Troughton or John Pertwee recreation. I feel like the novelty might wear off and it'd feel like they were doing impressions instead of performances. I don't know, I could be wrong. Maybe you can find an actor to play the part and feel like you're watching the second Doctor or the third Doctor. Personally, I think I would rather see with the new series, if they decide to do that, to possibly have the Doctors like from the new series, the 05 to the present series, make guest spots. I feel like using Doctors from the old show, it has kind of passed, although I think Paul McGann would still be a good choice while we can, because even Sylvester McCoy, some people were disappointed that him, Colin Baker, and Peter Davison did not participate in the 50th anniversary special, but even Sylvester McCoy said in an interview, you know, they don't look the same and it probably wouldn't have looked right. But as for recreations, I thought for those two cases it was fine. I don't know if I would want to continue seeing it over time though, but you know, that's just me. I think, you know, I'd rather say let's get Dave Tennant and Matt Smith back for cameos, but not, I think using older Doctors may have passed. Next question is a movie at bedtime. So, hi Rob, great to see you back in action again. I got a few questions for you. So, question 1, if you were isolated from life and people, which single film would you take with you and which franchise would you take that could stand repeated viewings? I had to think of a movie that I think every time you watch it, you find something different about it. I think those types of movies would be perfect for being trapped on a desert island. I would say Mahala Drive from David Lynch. Every time you watch it, it's like you discover something new and different, and I feel like every time I watch it still holds up my attention even though I might know what's coming. So in that case, I feel like that's a type of movie I would take on a desert island, something that, you know, you discover something new about. And personally, I don't know what it is. I don't like the term franchise. I feel like when I think of franchise, I think of McDonald's or Burger King where you can open up your own restaurant and be in control. I like the term film series a little bit better, but I think to answer that question, the film series I think I would like to take with me is the Star Trek movies, the original 6 and the Next Generation films. Question number 2, which famous actor or actress would you like to sit down and chat with, living and deceased? Well, there's three or two groups, I should say, that I would be interested. One is Robin Williams. I think he would have some very interesting stories, and I think in addition to, you know, to answering questions, I think he would be good with, you know, peppering his interview with jokes and, you know, and everything, and I would like to especially thank him for all the joy he brought to people over the years. And the Gish sisters, Lillian and Dorothy Gish, I'd want to know a little bit about the time in the theater and working on some of the early silent movies, and I think, you know, especially Lillian would have some interesting stories. My mom actually remembered when Lillian Gish was still alive, she did an interview in a Chicago theater. I think they screened one of her movies, and she answered questions, you know, from an interviewer, and I'm sure she had some interesting stories as well. So those would be my picks. Question number 3, what do you enjoy most about running your channel and making videos? Well, I would say interactions with you, the viewers, is one, and not have to worry about doing new releases. Most YouTube channels, they do everything they can to get new releases out, and they got the time to do it. And one thing I think what works with my channel is people are curious about older movies, and if they hear about a movie and if I happen to have reviewed it, they'll come to my channel, they can learn about them, or maybe they'll come across my channel and just discover this movie and, you know, and see if I have an opinion on it. What's interesting is most of the reviews for older movies, like for example, like the Soup to Nuts, which is a Three Stooges movie, their first movie, the one that they did with Ted Healy, their original leader, and some of my Marx Brothers and Wheeler and Woolsey and a bunch of other ones, they've been getting more views than the new releases. I think it's because the new releases, everybody on YouTube that does a movie review does it, but not too many people cover older movies. So I think talking about other movies that you may not have heard of, or maybe you discovered and you want to know more about it, I think I provide that, at least my opinion on that. So I think that's a plus with the channel and making videos. And question 4, I feel there was something magical about older movies, the look, feel, and sound. modern films for me don't have that aspect about them. Do you agree? If yes, is this down to the digital film looking too real, or is it just the actors? I don't know, sometimes for me when I look at some movies when they use practical effects versus digital, I think in most cases it holds up well, but of course it depends on the budget. There's been a few times I've seen movies where they use back projection, like in Dr. No, James Bond movie, where he's supposed to be driving on a road, but you can tell he's in a car and the background is a screen. It's not done on location. But I mean, sometimes if practical effects are used, sometimes they hold up very, very well. Like recently I rewatched the Warren Beatty, Dick Tracy, and there's a shot where it's like they must have used glass matte painting, but there's a shot where Tracy is with his girlfriend, and then it pans across the city to this club that Madonna is singing at, and it's like the city looks like it's out of a comic strip. So it's interesting, and I thought that shot worked very well. So I mean, it depends, but I think sometimes with digital effects, like for example the recent Morbius movies, where the special effects, the digital ones kind of looked fake. But I have seen some movies recently where I'm surprised to find out what I thought was a set was actually digitally added in. And then I think acting styles definitely have changed over time. Like I think actors from the 30s and 40s came from the stage where they had to project and use tone and facial expressions. Like for example, look at actors Spencer Tracy and Humphrey Bogart. They use what some people call the less is more style, where they don't have to shout but use their voice or their body to convey their thoughts, like a shrug of the shoulders or maybe like a twist of a head or something to convey what they're saying. And then of course in the 60s and 70s, method acting took off, where actors tried to look at what the character's goals and obstacles were and try to add another level of realism to their roles. So I think some actors are good at both styles, but others, especially nowadays, I think there's some actors that have gotten in because they're models or singers, and they might be good looking, and they may have little to no acting experience. And I think another thing is sometimes with action movies now, that sometimes not all the actors are on this. I found out that with some movies, not all the actors are on the set at the same time. And I think without the other person to interact with, it can affect their performance. Like recently, Elizabeth Olsen did an article where she says if you look at these scenes without the special effects, you see how ridiculous and hard it is to perform in them. So I mean, I think it depends. I don't think there's just one answer. I do think things have evolved, but I feel like acting has evolved because, again, back in the 30s and 40s, you got people that were stage trained. And same thing with the 50s and 60s and 70s. Some actors like Marlon Brando and Rod Steiger were trained at the Actors Studio, and they tried to up it a little bit, try to make you feel like you're watching the actual character, like they were a real person. And also another thing is, in a lot of the old 30s and 40s movies, some of those movies were shot on sound stages. They weren't shot on location. Like I think there's probably more than I know during the silent era, before they had all the cumbersome microphone and sound equipment. There was some filming on location, but I think once talkies came in, it was easier to control a movie on a set versus on location, with weather and everything. And sometimes you'd watch those movies and you can tell they're supposed to be outside, but it's a set. You can tell like it's, there's something about it that's not quite real. And I think after World War II, people were doing more experimenting with being on location, like John Huston, started doing some of that with his film noirs and some of his films. So over time things definitely change. And again, the acting styles, I do feel like now it's like some of the actors, like Christian Bale, great actor, trained actor, but there's some actors I feel like get in because they're well-known names. It may not be because they've had the experience, but so hopefully that answers your question a bit. But yeah, check out Spencer Tracy and Humphrey Bogart movies, and you'll see. Hopefully you'll see what I mean. Let's see here, like Roaring Twenties and Maltese Falcon, I would recommend for Humphrey Bogart. And Spencer Tracy, there's a lot to pick from with him, like Judgment at Nuremberg. That's one of his later movies. There's Libeled Lady, which is a comedy he did with Myrna Loy and William Powell and Jean Harlow. They came out in 1936. So and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, another later movie Spencer Tracy did, another one I would recommend. And finally, question 5. I think you studied film in college. What do you enjoy reading about cinema, old Hollywood, and specific genres? Well, I kind of enjoy background and analysis stories. Like, for example, right over here, I got some books right over here that deal with the history of movies. So if you give me just a sec here. Like, for example, the Columbia Comedy Shorts. This book details the short subjects department at Columbia where the Three Stooges made their picture. This book not only covers them, but it talks about other people that had series there, like Andy Clyde and Charlie Chase, Buster Keaton. It talks about salaries, it talks about writers, how the department was run, stories about, stunts going wrong. That always interests me. And then Wheeler and Woolsey, which was a team that was very popular in the 1930s but are kind of forgotten now. They were actually bigger box office stars than Laurel and Hardy and the Marx Brothers, believe it or not. The Hollywood Book of Extravagance, it's got some interesting stories. And then even though Monty Python is not really Hollywood, I got some books where that includes like an interview with, making their films and their TV shows. So that's kind of like what I like. There's another book I recommend about screenwriter Clyde Bruckman. He's somebody whose name's always popped up on old movies, and the only thing I knew about him was there was a book called The Hollywood Babylon that talked about some, stories, and I guess he had been a writer for Buster Keaton in the 1920s, and then Buster was his alcohol buddy. They'd be drinking buddies, and then over time it got the worst of him, and eventually he was forced to take routines he wrote for other comedians like Monty Banks, Buster Keaton, and Harold Lloyd and stick them into the screenplays that he was working on. And unfortunately, Harold Lloyd ended up suing him. And then in 1955, he killed himself with a shotgun. And his book goes into more details about how the business was like when he was first starting. Like, he was used to gang writing with other writers, working with the comedians on the set to spring up ideas for movies. And later in the 30s and 40s, he was often writing in a room away from the comedians. He was not allowed to interact with them, and it was not something he was used to. And then there were some other things that happened in his life. It's a very interesting book that I also recommend. So those are the types of books that I find interesting, is, stories about what happened in the past and how things were made and what they did for special effects back then, stuff like that. All right, well, that's all the questions you guys sent for me, so hopefully I'll be able to do some movie reviews very soon. Thank you guys that submitted questions. Hopefully I gave you the answers that you were looking for. Feel free to leave me any comments about these answers or about these questions. And of course, check out some other movie reviews that you can watch on the channels, whether it's movies that came out this past year or older movies. I've got a lot. Please hit the like button to like this video. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe to the channel. So hopefully very soon I can get back and get some more videos up for you guys to enjoy. And it's great to be back again. So thank you very much for watching.